Topping today's news, the government still working on finding a model to achieve a livable wage for Bahamians. In addition to its fight on global warming, the government continues its push towards food security. Police are reporting several brazen armed robberies that occurred this week. And should there be a closed season on the Queen Conch, we get the opinion of a local marine biologist. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jareno Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. It's a pleasure to have you join us. Ongoing discussions are taking place between the government, the Department of Labor, and the National Tripartite Council to produce draft models for livable wage in the country. This according to Minister of Labor Keith Bell while speaking with reporters at the Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press briefing. He added that the original minimum wage rise is the first step towards a livable wage and that the markup to $260 per week is not final.
You would note that many countries around the world have adopted different models. I think yesterday as I watched the news, there was a poll as to whether or not we ought to increase the wage every 3, 4, 5, or a number of years, whether we ought to use a scale, whether we ought to put something in the legislation where we're able to, the provisions are automatic in respect to when you can anticipate it. But again, it will all have to be discussed and determined, of course, in respect to, as well as in discussion and dialogue, with our social partners, all of the Employers Federation, certainly with the government, because it has significant financial implications. We don't want to necessarily appear to be unrealistic in our approach in terms of what the livable wage ought to be. So once there would have been extensive discussions and dialogue, then we would come and determine what model we ought to adopt in terms of going forward.
Minister Bell says the government does not have any specific model in mind. However, there are several models that will be presented to the public, the government, and other business stakeholders once discussions have been had. Minister Bell revealed that his ministry anticipates some 60,000 employees to be initially impacted by the minimum wage rise from $210 to $260, which comes into effect in January 2023 for the private sector. A number of businesses in the Bahamas have given their thoughts on how the impending minimum wage rise to $260 per week will impact their business operations, with some having spoken with the nation's leader earlier this week. Since the announcement of the increase in minimum wage, a topic that the Minister of Labor admits could be very controversial at times, there has been national discussion on how the increase will affect the country's economy, particularly local businesses. Cale Campbell may have some of the answers in this next report.
Chairwoman of the National Tripartite Council, the authority which brings economy stakeholders together to deliberate labor-related matters, Sharon Martin says she is very pleased with discussions so far regarding the national minimum wage increasing. Speaking with reporters at the Office of the Prime Minister's press briefing on Friday, Ms. Martin says the business sector understands the need for a rise in minimum wage.
I am very pleased with the consultation that was done with the business community, whether it was one-on-one with us or through the BCCEC, because there are actual business owners, and not one business owner that has spoken to me who has said, okay, you're going to hit my pocket. But nevertheless, they understand that the minimum wage had to be increased. Why? Simply, and you heard it earlier, the poverty line is something that we do not want in our country.
The NTC chairwoman explains that the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and Employers Federation sits at the NTC table of discussions, thus, businesses are able to give their input to them. She adds that any national subject that the NTC speaks on, businesses are welcomed to respond and take part in the discussion through the press or directly with the NTC.
They sit at the table with us. Therefore, the business community that is attached to BCCEC is there's an open door. We are available. But this is a national program. This is something national. No one needs to invite you to call the Tripartite Council. No one needs to ask you to come. Have have a public consultation. You can do your very own public consultation. Call the press, call the people that you need, and begin to have the dialogue. That does not mean that we did not have the dialogue.
Ms. Martin says they are keeping the poverty line in mind with the minimum wage increase, suggesting that the matter should have been addressed sooner based on studies conducted in years past.
No country wants to have persons pressed below the poverty line, and with all the various little increases here and there, that would happen to the persons. They would now go. They were where they were stable at the poverty line, wrong stable. Now you're talking about pushing them below the poverty line. And so even Keel, now when you think about it, Minister, that was a 2013 report, that expenditure report that speaks to $260. How many years have they expired since 2013? And we're just using that number right now. That figure's now been paid out.
NTC Chairwoman Martin echoes Labor Minister Bell in stating that the initial rise is a step towards eventually reaching a livable wage as dialogue with the country's business sector continues. She adds that it is mandated by Cabinet to return from discussions with a livable wage figure or concept. For JCN News, I'm Cale Campbell.
Thanks for that report, Kale. The government is embarking on an ambitious aspiration to cut its food imports by 25% by 2025. So says Minister of Agriculture, Marine Resources, and Family Island Affairs, Clay Sweeting. And this as the Bahamas continues to grapple with an unstable food import bill of over $1 billion. That is 90% of the food being imported into the country. Minister Sweeting, speaking at the 16th Exuma Business Outlook, says the goal is to achieve the reduction in imports by drastically increasing productivity. He highlighted some of the changes the government is making to decrease that percentage with the allocation of $6 million towards food security initiatives.
Firstly, we announced the construction of the cultivation centers, which will be epicenters of food production throughout our country. This will help to encapsulate agribusiness and other areas where it's so important for agriculture to be streamlined in our country. The centers will be built in New Providence, Eleuthera, and other family islands, which will include food processing kitchens, fish and farm stores, and a produce exchange. These centers are meant to assist us with modernizing our food production systems. We also intend to construct 2 state-of-the-art slaughterhouses, one in New Providence and another in Eleuthera. This year, we reopened the packing houses in Hatchet Bay, which was closed for 4 years, to provide farmers with more opportunities to sell their produce.
Mr. Sweeting says the government will also encourage vertical farming with the installation of containerized farms on family islands for the growing of fruits and vegetables to be sold locally and exported. The Ministry of Agriculture is hoping that incentives given to fishers, farmers, and agribusiness practitioners will practically amplify resilient food production in the country. Prime Minister Philip Davis recently announced that some 38 new items have been added to the price control list, with residents seeing price changes by today, in fact. In addition to that, Minister Sweeting says other food items are currently being evaluated.
The government has committed to working along with food producers as well. The markup of foods that is now being analyzed by the government include chicken, eggs, bread, bananas, apples, oranges, broccoli, onions, and potatoes. Moreover, we are working to reach the low-hanging fruits of investments to broaden our food production offerings. The Bahamas Agriculture and Marine Science Institute has embarked on a greenhouse project that will engage family island farmers and provide training in greenhouse technology to increase crop yields year-round. BAMSI is looking to invest $7 million in these greenhouse parks with the hope of cutting vegetable imports down by 30%. Vegetables such as tomatoes, sweet peppers, onions, cabbage, and lettuce are among the products targeted through this project. BAMC is looking to place these greenhouses in the family islands such as Exumo, Eleuthera, Cat Island, and North Andros.
Minister Sweeting says in the near future, the government will announce an incentive that will assist farmers in obtaining climate-smart technology in the hopes to combat food shortages and secure a sustainable food future. He also encourages Bahamians to start growing food in your backyards to help sustain yourselves. Wrapping up the week-long conference of the Water Industry Trade Events, visiting delegates of the Regional Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association, CWWA, topped off their week, or their trip, with a technical tour of the Consolidated Water Company, CWCO, Nassau-based desalination plant at Windsor Field this morning. The CWCO develops and operates seawater distillation plants and water distribution systems in the areas of the world where potable water is scarce and non-existent. Here is CWCO General Manager Henderson Cash giving an overview of what the delegates got to experience during the tour.
You're at a site. This is a new plant, and it was commissioned in 2018 following the decommissioning of the original plant, which had a service life of more than 20 years. It operated from 1997 all the way until 2018, so it made it through several hurricanes, and it was old faithful. It kept going. This is the new iteration of the plant. It has a capacity of 16 million imperial gallons per week. For those of you like American units, that's around 19.2 million imperial gallons US per week. It features innovative technologies and designs such as ERIs, which allows for isobaric pressure exchange for energy recovery, and use of the brine reject side of this process for cooling purposes on our high-pressure drive systems.
The plant supplies up to 30% of the island, which includes the Western New Providence district, as well as some hotels in the area with potable water. Because of its design, the plant is completely energy efficient.
It employs, in terms of its design and its energy use, technology that makes it a very low energy input plant for maximum output. So we strive always to be very energy efficient. The process of reverse osmosis requires energy input because you're going against a natural process to have this outcome of purified water at the end. We want to minimize the amount of energy input. When we talk about energy, in the case of this plant, we're talking about electricity and diesel. So we're always seeking ways and means to maximize output and reduce energy input.
CWCO, the platinum sponsor for all CWWA events, is touted as a Caribbean success story with notable growth potential, given that the Caribbean region, like other nations globally, are always in need of potable water and as populations grow and industries expand. The Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association's 31st Annual Conference and Exhibition was hosted in partnership with the Water and Sewage Corporation of the Bahamas at the Atlantis Beach Resort on Paradise Island under the theme Regional Actions for Global Sustainability in the Water and Wastewater Sectors. And finally, in this segment, 3 former employees of Little Whale Key, a private island in the Berry Islands, were each arraigned in the magistrate's court on Friday morning on multiple counts of fraud. 23-year-old female Shawnell Rogers, along with 2 adult males, 28-year-olds Vashawn Lloyd and Frederick Roll, all appeared before Magistrate Kendra Kelly on charges of attempting to fraud, uttering forged documents, and possession of the same. Rogers was charged with 1 count of uttering a forged document, 1 count of possession of a forged document, and 1 count of fraud by false pretense. It is alleged that on Thursday, January 13, 2022, while at New Providence, Rogers produced a forged Scotiabank check made out by Little Whale Key to her and attempted to cash the same at Commonwealth Bank at their Golden Gates branch with the intent to obtain $3,000 from the company's account. Both Lloyd and Rowe were charged with fraud after trying to obtain $5,000 from Little Whale Key's Scotiabank account on Saturday, January 15th this year. Rogers, Lloyd, and Rowe all pleaded not guilty to the charges and were granted bail in the sum of $5,000 each. The trio is set to return to court on the 13th of February, 2023. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.
Now, I know I've said it before, but this time, I swear it's different. Grammy dreamed about this number, so I won't lose. I can't lose. This is my last time. Please, son, just give me one more chance. I'll give it all back to you.
Excessive gaming affects more than just the gamer. This message has been brought to you by the Gaming Board for the Bahamas, which encourages you to game responsibly.
Problem gambling and addiction has many faces. You never really know you have a problem until it has overtaken you. You just keep on making excuses. You could be down to your last dollar and listen to that voice that tells you you might just hit one big number or even a lucky spin. Before you know it, you begin chasing your losses and borrowing money from your friends, family, and even strangers. The next thing you know, you are using the money for your rent or electricity bill. Then when you become so desperate, it's the children's school fees, lunch that is being used to feed the addiction. It just doesn't stop. No matter how much you lose or how many people you hurt, you're the last person to admit that you have an illness. You are in constant denial, lying to yourself and playing the blame game. They don't understand. They don't get it. Everyone is always judging me. You stress me out and cause me to gamble. You become your own worst enemy without even realizing it. It wasn't until I lost the trust of everyone that was there for me and was completely alone that I can see that something had to change. I really needed help. I just couldn't do it on my own. If you or anyone else you know needs help, please call the numbers on your screen. Remember, hope and help is available. Call today.
Shell Unleaded improves your fuel economy, giving increased miles per gallon, allowing you to do more of what you really want. Special additives used in Shell Unleaded improve your engine's efficiency. So go further with Shell Unleaded. Venture out to beaches, Junkanoo, and festivals and bring home memories that will last a lifetime. Shell, fueling journeys that matter.
Marlin Marine and Generac have the standby generator that fits your needs. Conserve power by using only 1 or 2 circuits during an outage with our 7.5 kilowatt, or manage your power usage with our 10 to 16 kilowatt standby. But why only power part of the house? Get whole house protection with our 20 kilowatt Generac standby and never lose power again. Give us a call at 393-7873 and get the right unit for you. Marlin Marine, giving you power on land and sea.
Kids, let's go! Sean, what are you doing?
I solved it. We'll buy our life insurance policy from this company and then go over here and get our home insurance. Then get our motor policy from right over here.
Or we could just get it all with CG Atlantic. Save a lot of money and effort.
They do it all? Even pensions?
Even pensions.
We're like a husband that doesn't overcomplicate everything. CG Atlantic. Good like that.
Did you know that as a farmer registered with the Department of Agriculture, you can access duty-free concessions for imported items to be used on your farm. That means you can bring in farming tools and materials duty-free. Some examples of those items covered under this concession include packing materials, produce boxes, seeds, fertilizer, water pumps, fencing materials, and hydroponic systems. For more information on any of these incentives, please call the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resources, and Family Island Affairs at 397-7400. That's 397-7400. For additional updates, you can follow the ministry on social media at Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at MOAMRFIA Bahamas, where you can find weekly episodes of our Good to Grow segment, as well as our Good to Grow podcast. Did you know that registering your farm with the Department of Agriculture is currently free of charge? It comes with a wide range of benefits, such as assistance with feeder farm roads, land clearing, and tractor services, assistance with Department of Immigration for obtaining foreign farm labor at a reduced permit fee, access to fish and farm stores for agricultural input supplies, sale of produce at packing house, produce exchange, abattoir services at a reduced price, training at the Food Technology Laboratories, disaster relief assistance, and free veterinary extension services. For more information on any of these incentives, please call the Ministry of Agriculture, Marine Resources, and Family Island Affairs at 397-7400. That's 397-7400. For additional updates, you can follow the ministry on social media at MOAMRFIA Bahamas,